We're down at a 70-acre lake in Surrey, right near to Heathrow, so the planes are noisy. Here for 24 hours filming, but I've already done one night and it's got off to a great start with this fish and one other one. So we're going to go through a few tactics on boat fishing, fishing big lakes, and how we approach things here with strong tackle and fishing at range from boats, baiting up, and a few different things. But start off with, we've got this one to go with. So this lake we're on is about 70 plus acres. It's got 3 islands on it, and you can fish off all the 3 islands. They've all got swims on them, and it's unique because it's all boat fishing. So even the swims that are on the bank are secure, so you have to get to them by boat. And it's the first lake that I've ever fished using a boat, so it was all new to me when I first came on here. But yeah, it's a big bit of water. It's obviously broken up with a few islands, which can make it tricky because the nature of the 3 islands are right down the middle. So it's difficult to see the whole lake from one place, which makes it a longer process of learning the lake when you can't see all of it. Using the boat, it sort of makes, over time, it makes it quite a lot smaller, but it's windswept and it's a really good challenge to fish, you know, big water with a boat, and you never get bored of it. It's really exciting. Basically, last night I had a fish, that common that we saw earlier, and it moved the cane basically in the night when I hooked it, or early hours of this early morning. So I've gone out there to replace the cane, but the only way I can do it is to find it from another area of the lake with a marker float. I know people use prodding sticks and some people use deepers and sonar, whatever, but I'd much rather find the spot with a marker float like the old fashioned way, so I can feel it. And obviously I know where it is from this area, so I can come here, pop the marker float up, and then I go out and put a cane basically next to the marker, bait it up, come back in, take the marker out. I've got my bait super accurate, I've got the cane out there, and using canes is a lot better to me than H-blocks. I'll often use H-blocks when I first find a spot, and drop one in, because you can then get your bearings when you're out in the boat and donk round it. But I'd always place a cane. One, they're better fish-wise. If you tend to hit a cane, the line will bounce off. You're not going to snag your line. Whereas an H-block, you catch it round the rope. You're in real trouble. And also, it's subtle. No one can see your spot with a cane. You've got that much of the top of it showing. With an H-block, people 200 yards away can see what spot you're fishing. So the spot out there is about 13.5 wraps in this channel, and I fish in this swim quite a bit and fish there, and it was always my banker spot. But I'm quite fortunate that I can actually fish it from the other swim. It's longer, but with the boat, obviously that isn't such a problem. The line lay is better from the other swim, although it's a bit longer. But it gives me more options as opposed to just being able to really be limited to one spot. I've got 2 other really good spots that I can get to from the other swim, which is one of the advantages of boat fishing. You know, you can spread out a bit more and you're not so limited as long as your lines aren't causing problems with one another. So this is a good example of it. You can fish longer ranges, more spots, but in a way almost better line lay, and you know, easier for getting fish in. Your lines are down better, you're away from the drifting weed, and it's one of those things with boat fishing. You can look at different areas and go, right, well, I can fish it from here, I can fish it from there, and it just gives you so many more options. And this was an example of it. When I fished in here, I could only get bites from one spot. When I'm fishing the other swim, I'm getting bites from all 3 spots. Yeah, that was really good then. I put that rod out there, and it's a tricky one to do because you're fishing at the base of a bar, but the bar's really uneven. It's like big paving slabs. So if you touch them, you can blunt the hook. And obviously we were out there in the wind. It's really important to get it exactly right. But everything, the wind and the drift of the boat makes it difficult, and of the spots I've got, that's the hardest one to get right. So I was really pleased then. I sort of come back a little bit from the cane, and the first one was pretty hard. I knew I was sort of on the edge of the bar, and then I came back literally a foot, and it was about 2 foot deeper, much softer. And that's exactly what I'm looking for. And I don't think I got this right yesterday when I got here. I think I was too close to the bar. And I think that's why I didn't get a bite on it last night. The stock of the lake it's a bit unknown really. I mean, there's quite a lot of stock fish that have been added over the years, and there's a number of originals, some dating back for a very long time, but there's in essence probably 20 really big carp, 40 plus, topped by 2 good 50s, mid 50, and one's done close to 60 pounds. So really good stock, and a lot of unknown fish, a lot of fish that go missing for 2 or 3 years, and then they'll turn up sort of 10 pound bigger. So it's really exciting. You just don't know what you're going to pull out in a lot of cases. There's ones you've seen and you want to catch, but there's ones coming through all the time, and there's fish as well that are quite sort of territorial in here, that only seem to come out of certain areas of the lake. In a way, you can sort of semi-target some of these because they're more favourable areas for them. There's some big features out there you can catch fish off. You can catch them close in, you can catch them a long way out. It's kind of got everything really, but I suppose for me the most exciting thing is a bit of the unknown. There's not much of that in carp fishing now, and in here I'm sure there's several fish that you'll pop up and sort of suddenly go, they're almost be unknowns because they've been that long. This is the rig I use for 90% of my boat fishing. 6 foot length of Camflex lead free leader, helicopter style, flat pair lead drop off with a C-clip, and then a nice stiff boom, 20 pound Mirage hook link, stiff that kicks the hook bait away from the lead when you drop it straight down from the boat. Size 4 or 6 sharpened mugger, a bit of putty to pin it all down, and a white or pink pop up over a red fish meal always seems to work. When you're fishing at long range, or especially here when you've got a lot of drifting weed at this time of year, the weed's coming up and dying, this Gardner weed rate on the pole is a vital piece. I use it every week, a lot of times, either in the edge to pull bits of weed out to get your lines down, or even out in the pond to move whole weed beds. You stick the rake into a weed bed and use the motor to move the whole thing out the way, which obviously when you've got 120 plus yards of line out, you can see the weed beds, move them out the way, get your line down. Something I use every week, brilliant bit of kit. So this is the braided main line I'm using here. Braid is a massive advantage when fishing at long range, and this is the Gardner Hydrosync Noir braid. So it's black coloured, 25 pound breaking strain. It's quite thick, 0.35. It's not a casting braid out and out, long range braid. It's a really strong, robust line for this sort of fishing. It's also got a fluorocarbon weave in it, so it sinks incredibly well, which with drifting weed beds and strong winds coming through, that's what you want, is a really heavy sinking braid. So this morning I've redone the 3 rods. Basically one of them I had to put the cane out again because the fish I caught last night took the cane out, so I've had to replace that. I went out there, the first 2 rods I went out without the cameraman, just because they were the hardest ones to do. One was quite long range and the other's a very small spot, and in the wind it was really tricky. But I was really pleased with those 2, and then the 3rd one we've gone out, replaced the cane, done that, put it in, and that's all gone really well as well. That's a really small spot. I didn't actually put any bait out when I went out to do the rods. I'll go out, put all my bait in, buy the canes, then come back and take 1 rod out at a time. It's far easier. You're making less disturbance. You go out, put the bait in, come back, do the rod. It's much, much easier. It's far less complicated. When I think about target fish here, there's 2 big fish, 2 big 50s in here. and they're the ones I want, and that's what we're now in September. That's what I'm setting my stall out for. I'm sort of narrowed down where I'm fishing, just specifically because they've got form for coming out of those areas. And in a way, I think, you know, I could get more bites elsewhere, but for the next 4 or 5 weeks of autumn, when there's a good chance one or both of them are going to come out, I want to concentrate in these areas. So generally with me, it's sort of about the biggest fish in the lake, and there's two I really want, and I had this ticket a few years ago, and I got the ticket back because of those two fish. So all of my fishing on this big lake is over boilies, boilie fishing. Here using 15, 16 millers. At the moment we've got warm water temperatures, so I always use oils and bait boosters to glug up the bait 24 hours before I come. Put it over frozen bait, let them thaw out in it. Obviously baiting from the boat, it's easy, you're tipping it out, so it's not like you've got to spom it, sticky bait, so that's a really good way of doing it. And then this particle, my mate makes it for me, I don't even know what's in it. It stinks of garlic, all different seeds, but it's great for clearing off spots. So if I find an area I'm interested in for the following week, I'll always put this stuff on it when I leave. I don't really fish over it, but I use it for prepping in the future. Again, all the fish eat it, roach, everything, and it clears the spots. So I can quite often come back the following week and find the area I want to fish really cleaned off. I've been fortunate enough to catch a few of the good ones out of here, and a couple that spring to mind. Last autumn I spent a lot of time fishing a swim off the bank, and it was getting better and better. I would put bait in every time I left, and it was sort of becoming a bite a night. At that time of year, it was well into October, and all the bites were at night, and I had a 3-week spell where I had a 37-pound mirror, and the following week I had a 41-pound mirror that I'd never seen before off the spot, and I kind of felt something good was coming. And following week again, sort of just before first light, I had a bite and played a fishing that didn't do a great deal, and I had a fish that was just under 46 pound. Awesome looking fish in proper autumn colours, and yeah, really pleased with that one, because I'd worked quite hard at this particular spot, and I'd stayed in there because I was getting bites, but I'd kept working at it, and it wasn't easy in there because we had so much rain last autumn. The level was coming up and up and up, and it was getting deeper and deeper, and I was actually casting for them, so I was getting in the water to cast, and that made it tricky. And then this year I've had a couple of nice fish as well. I had a pretty rare common out of an area called the aquarium, which is down the bottom end. It's quite a tricky place to fish. It's deep and silty, and a lot of the silt isn't great. It's quite smelly, and I was lucky. I found a spot there, and it did me about 6 bites in a row. I couldn't seem to get a bite on any other rod, but it was obviously the hot spot. And again, one morning I had a bite, and I had it was spawned out at 39 pound, but an awesome old looking common. Again, that's quite a rare visitor to the bank, and yeah, really pleased with that one. And then we sort of rolled into summer and spawning, and I had a few good ones down in weight, but 2 weeks ago I fished back down in that aquarium again, and not really having a lot to go on. I hadn't done a lot of work and down there, and lucky enough to get a bite on the second morning, and brought in a huge ball of weed, sort of the size of a car, and in the middle of it was a fish 40 pound 10, a stunning fish with a big plain mirror with great big paddle on it, and I sort of brought it in from about 100 yards in this huge weed bed, a proper test of the tackle. And yeah, really awesome to pull the weed apart and see inside, you know, a fish that was getting bigger and bigger the more weed I pulled out. And yeah, great buzz in fishing, you know, especially when you've been out there and found a spot and placed your rig exactly with the boat, and you know, sat back and waited, and to get that, and you know, really test out your tackle and your ability, really. It was, yeah, awesome, you know, awesome bit of fishing. Going back, I always used to think of spring as my favourite time of year, but now I would say I prefer autumn, especially on these sort of big pits really. And this one in particular, the weed, now we're mid-September, the weed's dying back, the water clarity's coming back, but ultimately I think the fish are on the bait more. You go from spring and the fish charging around the lake and sort of singles to, you know, the fish after spawning being sort of, you know, a bit more localised and in the weed, but now they're spread out. And I suppose my strength as an angler is baiting and finding spots and using quite a bit of bait, and autumn on here plays into my hands a bit. I go from probably using, you know, a third of the bait in the summer to what I use now in the autumn, and the lake looks magic, you know, the baiting works, and if you can find a spot and get bites and keep bait going in, you tend to get sort of repeated success off it, which isn't always the case at the sort of different times of the year. But this time of year on here, if you can get something going, you can keep it going. So yeah, the light's fading now, and this is the time we've been looking forward to really all day, because it's mid-September, all the bite times have changed. It's all night now, very rare to get a bite in the day, so you're kind of waiting out the days, getting your rods in position for now onwards. And we've got the big full moon tonight, the light's going, so good bit of anticipation, looking forward to what tonight brings, and hoping we're going to be lucky. Ripper, wasn't it? It's going left, but I don't know, it's so hard to tell how far out it is. But yeah, he's pulling back. So yeah, just don't want it kiting too far left. You know? There's a bit of weed about 20 yards out. I think it's just hit that, but it's still moving. Straight out in front it is, but I kind of feel it's got to be fairly close now. But oh, and he's just come off as well.
Is it?
Yeah. Is it taking them out the clip? So morning after the big moon, and a bit disappointing really. I had a bite at about 9 o'clock that I got all the way back in, and just caught my other line at the end. Got a quick look at a decent mirror and it came off when it hit the other line, which was really disappointing, but it was encouraging in a way because it was an early bite, and I started hearing a few out there and it was looking hopeful, but as is carp fishing, woken up this morning and it's all been pretty quiet, and with every bite seeming to be at night, I kind of feel like the chance has gone, but tried hard this week and back next week.